We had a transition over the summer where we had a VP that left, and the position had not been replaced. And so it was in July. And then in August, I started getting emails about our upcoming board meeting that was happening. I'm like, I don't know why I'm getting these emails. I've never been copied on this before. I had been to one board meeting at least to kind of see how it all worked. And so I reached out to the provost and I said, I'm getting these. He's like, oh no, you're going to give the report at the meeting. I said, oh, the meeting in like a week. He said, yes. I was like, okay. And I said, "Where does the report come from?" And so, thank goodness for institutional research. They helped me develop it. We got it all into place. I was doing the retention and the enrollment report, and I was terrified.
Welcome to Mission of Missions. I'm your host, Jeremy Tiers. This is the show designed to help you grow, both professionally and personally, in the fast-paced world of higher education. Every other Tuesday, I sit down with senior leaders, new professionals, and difference makers from across higher ed and beyond, where we'll share tips and strategies related to challenging topics like student recruitment, leadership, customer service, enrollment marketing, and time management. So if you're looking for practical advice and conversations that actually move the needle, this show's for you. Grab your notepad or fire up your notes app, and let's get into it. Hey everybody, it's Jeremy Tiers, and this is episode 77 of the Mission Admissions podcast. Throughout the year, I've been getting more questions than ever before from senior enrollment and senior marketing leaders about managing the relationship with their school's president, as well as with their board. And so if you're a VP currently or a senior leader at any level, or if you hope to be in that role someday soon, I think today's episode with Amanda Craddock, who is the Vice President for Enrollment Management at Coastal Carolina University, should help to put some of those things in perspective. Welcome to the show, Amanda.
Thank you, Jeremy. I'm glad to be here today.
So let's start by giving the audience some context because I think it's important, and all organizational charts, as anybody listening knows, are not the same at every college and university. And so, Amanda, you're not part of the president's cabinet at Coastal, but you do work alongside both the president and the Board of Trustees, correct?
That is correct, yes. I actually report through academic affairs into the provost.
And so you became the VP at Coastal almost 3 years ago. If you had to pick one skill, what have you improved the most since you became VP that you feel like, hey, this has really helped me navigate these different senior level conversations that I'm a part of?
I honestly think the biggest is kind of bringing yourself up to the higher level. So not getting in the weeds. We're enrollment experts. There's a lot of things we could share, talk about the data, dig into all the points. But the folks at the senior levels, whether it's your board, your cabinet, they just want the broader picture. They want the general overview, what's happening in the landscape. So how do you, in very pithy sort of short overview, tell them what's happening and not focus too much on the details that you need to share with your director, other members of your staff, and different things.
So what has helped you ultimately understand how to do that better? Because I'm assuming, like most people, right, we don't know what we don't know until we actually start doing it, and it either goes well or doesn't go well. So I don't know if you can give any example even, like how have you learned, especially in the 3 years you've been at the VP level there, how to do exactly what you just described?
I think I've been a little bit fortunate because I came up through sort of the rank, so to speak, at Coastal. So I was in a director level position for a number of years and then progressed to the vice president level. So I understood Coastal, I understood our data, I understood our students. So I didn't have to learn that landscape like a lot of new VPs do, where they have to understand the context of the institution first. And then I also knew the data, and I love data. I use that to inform a lot of what I do, like most VPs. So I think that was the biggest part. And then the other was just reading, going to the Chronicle, going to Inside Higher Ed, connecting with colleagues on LinkedIn to find out what's happening in the broader picture, to know if what you're seeing in your institution is something that's happening regionally, nationally. You've got to be up to date on the trends and read all of the articles and books and things that are coming out. So I think you have to stay on top of that as well.
I love that you brought up data too, because the number of people at the director or even the middle management level that I'll have conversations with. And they're like, I want to be Amanda one day at the VP level. And I'm like, how much do you like data? And they're like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, do you actually enjoy getting into your CRM? Do you know how to do things if you have Slate like configurable joins? Like, and so many people are like, well, and I'm like, this is again what so much of I would argue the VP level is, right? Is it's getting into the data. And so how, I mean, just from an advice standpoint, Amanda, if somebody's it's not that they're against learning more about data, but they're just not really comfortable with it right now. What advice would you give them if they do want to hopefully be a senior level enrollment leader one day?
That's probably one of the hardest things. I started as an admissions counselor 26 years ago. So I love the interaction with the people. I loved recruiting. I love meeting students, reading applications. And I still love that part of my job. And I try to keep that relevant, even if it's not, maybe 10% of what I do, as opposed to 90% it used to be. And so I've had to teach myself to like the data. And I'm not a math person either. I've had to learn to be a math person. And I'm also, going to date myself. I went through college before we had Microsoft, and so I didn't know spreadsheets. I didn't understand Excel, so I really had to teach myself. I think one of the biggest things is I Google how to do things in Excel, how to learn how to use this document, how to create pivot tables, how do you filter your data. So just teaching myself those things has been the biggest. And then when I was working on my doctorate, I did a quantitative dissertation, so I had to learn SPSS. I had to learn how to look at that. So I think educating yourself, number one, just, not asking the questions, but being proactive and figuring out how to do it. And then I had a VP who was very good at the data, and she mentored me and taught me. So she would send me spreadsheets. I need you to look at this. Tell me your first impressions. What do you think of this? And I'm trying to do the same with my team now, so they can go in and look and kind of learn how to interpret what you're seeing. Even if you've got a great CRM coordinator that's developing all those queries for you, you've got to be able to understand that. And I try to train my staff on how to do that as well.
I know Coastal's president just began his tenure a few months
Yeah.
ago. Your previous president moved on to a different institution. So, what's been your process, Amanda, knowing, okay, I now have to get to know a new president who I'm assuming you didn't know before he came to Coastal when it comes to figuring out, all right, does he operate and lead kind of the same way as my previous president? And just walk us through maybe some of the things you've tried to do since your president started to gain his trust and know how to best ultimately give him the information he needs.
Sure. I think the big thing is to kind of take cues from your president, kind of the meetings that you're in, what kind of questions are being asked, how do they like to see the data, how much you think they might understand enrollment. And so I think we're fortunate that our new president came from a provost position where enrollment reported through him. And so I knew from day one, I'm like, oh, wow, this is great. This is somebody that understands enrollment, somebody that might ask the right questions. It's also allowed me to kind of step up my game a little bit, knowing that you have someone that understands yield and understands accept rates and numbers you need to hit targets and goals. So that has really been refreshing, I think, to be asked those questions and be asked to send the information, send the data. So our new president is really looking at enrollment as everybody's responsibility. And so our reports go out to all of the president's cabinet every week. And then what I try to do is provide the context based on time of year. So they may be getting reports last week that was leading up to many schools' early action deadlines. Our early action is still 2 weeks away. And so I do a context sort of report on this is where we're looking. But again, the next 2 weeks, we could jump up 20, 30% more in submitted applications. We might be down this week because of X, Y, or Z. And I get often questions back, well, what does this mean? How do we want to interpret this? So I think I like having somebody asking the questions. I like being included in the conversations that we're having. And I think you just have to take your cues by how much or how little they might want to know and how often they're asking the questions.
And so I'm sure some people listening to this are like, gosh, Amanda, I would love to have your situation where my president understands enrollment, but for whatever reason, he or she may not. And so just any advice or thoughts on, all right, if you were talking with your VP counterpart at another school and that person was like, yeah, my president isn't really deep in the weeds and doesn't understand enrollment, how should they maybe handle some of the dialogue they have a little differently?
Yeah. And I've had that before too. So I did work for a provost one time. And in our first year, he's looking at data and reaches out and says, something happened around May 1. You just got a lot of deposits that came in. Well, that's the national candidate reply date. So what I started to do is kind of just those touch points in our calendar. So, when are the application deadlines? When do we need to be paying attention to those? When are our large events? Why are we hosting yield events in April instead of January or February? So I've tried to do education, one-on-one through meetings, the one-on-one meetings I have with my supervisors of sort of, this is our calendar, this is what we do. This is when it's important for financial aid to be coming in. This is when FAFSA data. So I think some of it's education and just sharing the landscape. And then also, if they can, they're often busy, but sometimes they have come and talked to my team. They've reached out. I've had a boss one time that came in and wanted to meet with my leadership team and just find out what their roles are, understanding the org chart. There's a lot of complications that go into enrollment management, how you're situated, how your team is organized, and just being able to share. It's not just those campus tours that you see out your window walking around campus. There's a whole operation behind the scenes processing. There's digital things happening, mailings happening, and then just funneling all the mail and decisions and everything out the door. So I think it's just sharing those, letting them know there's a team behind this. I tend to be the face of enrollment at Coastal in a lot of ways, but I've got a great team of people that are actually making the things happen. And I always like to be able to share that. And that's how I educate them on, how this comes together. I also have a presentation I do across campus that's, you see the numbers at the end of the day, but what all goes into it? And I've taken things from screenshots from the CRM of our workflows and letters and comm plans, and this is how we shape the class. So others across campus understand that as well.
Let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. Forsyth Tech was struggling to engage prospects promptly. Staff were overwhelmed and leads were slipping through the cracks. Then they brought in Element 451's Bolt agents. These AI-powered assistants stepped in to answer inquiries, send reminders, schedule visits, and route leads day or night. As a result, prospect to applicant conversion hit 25% within 3 weeks, and enrollment rose 12%. The impact? Counselors focused on high-value conversations while Bolt agents handled the rest. Fast response, higher yield, happier staff. Support your counselors with 24/7 AI teammates. Try an agent today at element451.com/agents. I love that you mentioned talking up your staff under you in the admissions office there, just because I think it's so important. And it's not that I would argue a lot of senior leaders don't value their staff, but I'm not in enough places where that's happening intentionally, Amanda. And I think it's such an important thing for any leader listening, right? Regardless of what level you're at, when you can educate other people who don't know what they don't know because they're not there every day, that these are some of the people behind the scenes who are making this happen, right? What besides data then, because obviously being current on data and understanding data, absolutely important when you have a conversation with president. What are some of the other things that you do when okay, I have to meet with the president, so I know I need to do typically this, this, and this. And I understand some of that will be situational, but for example, do you usually come up with certain questions you're going to want to ask the president? And just what are things that you do to prepare for a meeting besides, again, pulling reports and being current on data?
Mhm. I think it's always important to ask your president, what are your goals? And, have that conversation because the goals have to be aligned. And, what needs to happen to maybe accomplish a certain goal. And a president, a board may have another number in mind or something different that is okay, wait, let's have a candid conversation. I can maybe make this happen, but I might need some resources, or this is going to have to be in play. Or I might need to let you know about X happening across campus that may impact what we're trying to do in my area. And so I think you can't make the decisions in a silo. They have to be a conversation. And so that's one thing. We were just having meetings this week on some target numbers. And, the question was asking, can you get there? And I said, I can if all these factors are going to be in place. And if they're not, it's going to be a little bit challenging. And so I try to be transparent. I always like to err on the side, I don't want to say caution, but if we want to hold acceptance rates the same, we want to hold discount rates the same, we may not be able to reach the goal that you might want us to get to. But if I can lower this or raise that, then yes, I think it would be feasible. So I think it's just having to be honest, because you don't want as a VP to say you can accomplish something that is not going to be reality. And especially if things like budgets are built on an enrollment number that's just not feasible.
How do you push back respectfully?
It's hard. I'm lucky that I haven't really been in a situation that I've had to. I think that I've earned the respect of a lot of people on campus. Our senior leadership, I've been presenting enrollment reports to our board for over a decade. I started that actually as a director of admissions. And so I've had good years and bad years. And luckily I've come out of those okay. And I think when the years have not been as great, there's reasons behind it, good or bad, that I've just been very transparent about. And when we've had great years, it's been celebrated. So I haven't really been in a situation that I've had to push back too much and say, this isn't going to happen. It's been this, we can make this work, but I just want you to know this might be, like, for example, if we lower an acceptance rate because we want to hit a number, it could hit retention, graduation 2-3 years down the line. And are we okay with that as an institution? So those are some of the conversations we've had to have.
Well, and to your point, right? If you did have to push back, I think it's hopefully having context as to what you're pushing back against, knowing what questions to ask, right? If you need that additional context, and then being willing to say, okay, if you want us to hit this goal or you want to change this metric, I feel like then this needs to happen. This needs to happen. We need more of this. And it's just being willing, I think, to advocate for those things, knowing you're right. At the end of the day, they may still say, well, Amanda, you're not going to get any of those things. So you still need to find a way to go make it happen. And then you do your best, right, with the tools that you have.
Correct. Yes. And then, on the years that we haven't hit target, at that first meeting of the new year, I go and I give an outline of these are the strategies that we have in place to address X, Y, and Z, or these are areas of optimization that we're looking to for the next year. So they know that we took it seriously. We kind of digested, figured out what happened, and this is the path strategically that we're going to aim to not have it happen the next year.
So let's talk then about some of the conversations you've had to have with the board there at Coastal. And you were sharing with me that, the first conversation you had with the board was when you were a director at Coastal. And just what do you remember about that experience? Again, whatever you're comfortable sharing.
Yeah. So, we had a transition over the summer where we had a VP that left, and the position had not been replaced. It was in July. And then in August, I started getting emails about our upcoming board meeting that was happening. I'm like, I don't know why I'm getting these emails. I've never been copied on this before. I had been to one board meeting at least to kind of see how it all worked. And so I reached out to the provost and I said, I'm getting these. He's like, oh no, you're going to give the report at the meeting. I said, oh, the meeting in like a week. He said, yes. I said, okay. And I said, where does the report come from? And so thank goodness for institutional research. They helped me develop it. We got it all into place. I was doing the retention and the enrollment report. And I was terrified. I had never done a board presentation. I had never been in a room of that level before. And there was really no coaching. Nobody was saying, okay, Amanda, this is how it's going to work. You're going to get up. This is how you address the board. None of those things. And so that's one thing we don't train our leaders on. I was reading Angel Perez's book, The Hottest Seat on Campus, and he talks a little bit about interacting with the board. And this is, maybe where we don't help our leaders. I just remember calling my dad, who at the time was working in a business. And I was like, he said, okay, so it's, if it's a male, Mr. Chairman of the board, Mr. Chair of this committee, it's part of the president's report. You need to acknowledge the president, just the protocol kind of things you have to know. And then the good thing was it was just numbers and data. And that's what I was presenting on. So that was my first one. And I think it went pretty well. And then from there, I've just gotten a comfort level. And I sort of kind of know which trustees might ask which questions, who's looking for context, if something's not looking well, or we have an area, like, for example, let's say in-state applications are down, I might be able to anticipate the question there. So you just have to kind of get to know your board. And we've been lucky at Coastal to have a number of the same board members. We have had some new ones, but it's been a good relationship. I've been lucky in talking with colleagues at other institutions. My board, generally very supportive. They are asking good questions. Their big thing is we've changed things. So I've done a little bit of coastal. We did test optional admission, and we were doing that pre-COVID. We went from rolling admission to deadline admission. So these are things I need to tell the board that are happening. And when they ask me the question, they want to know the research has been done and what are our peers and competitors doing. And by doing this, what might be the gain to the institution? And so just being able to talk confidently and know that you've done the research and know that you think this is to position your institution to be better. And they've been very supportive of that.
A couple of times during our conversation, you've mentioned this idea of having the confidence to be able to be prepared, to be able to speak up, and so on and so forth. Amanda, where do you think our confidence comes from?
I think back, so I was in a search relatively early. I mean, I was a director level, so it's probably been 10, 11 years for a not cabinet level, but a senior level, like associate VP position. And I had interviewed and applied for the job, and the feedback from the search firm was a little green and maybe not have the gravitas to be able to get up and present to a board. And I thought about that. And I was like, how do you display that in an interview? How do you display that to your campus? And so I think I like public speaking. I do enjoy, getting up and being able to share the stories and good things that are happening at our institution and within my office. So I think that comes naturally to me. I think the confidence comes from understanding what's happening. And I started as an admissions counselor at 22 years of age from my alma mater. And, I came up the ranks. So I've done kind of everything in the admissions world. My challenge was financial aid 7 years ago when I started supervising that. I'm like, okay, what do I need to learn about financial aid? And I had good mentors in that space as well. So I think to confidently speak, you also have to understand what's happening in your area because you're representing, like I said, your team, and you need to know what they're doing. You need to know the pain points of maybe what's not working. And I think that's where, for me at least, some of my confidence comes in. My confidence comes in from I feel that I can stand up there and legitimately talk about things that are really happening, and I know they're happening, and I know what's happening behind the scenes. I'm at the open house, so I can say we had a great open house. This is our feedback because I heard the feedback.
As it pertains to conversations with your president versus, say, the board, how do you know the level of detail then that you need to prepare or share in those reports so that you're not, again, I'll say, bombarding the wrong people with too much info?
Yeah. So, I go into meetings and I have all my file and all my documents. And so whether it's spreadsheets, my talking points, my notes, I use bulleted lists and different things. I'm trying to I just bought a Kindle Scribe. I'm trying to make this all electronic so I don't have papers everywhere. But I walk into those meetings with that information. Normally I have copies for my president or the provost or whoever I'm meeting with. And then I've realized they don't like paper. They don't want to take more paper with them. So, I kind of see how the conversation is starting. What kind of questions am I getting? And if it's getting to the point that I feel like, okay, now I can pull this piece of paper out and let's look at this together. And whether it's a spreadsheet, whether it's just data points, different things. So I kind of take the cue from them. I go in prepared for everything. And then sometimes I leave a meeting and I'm like, oh wow, I didn't even open this folder to pull anything out of it. Or I just looked at it for my reference points. So I think again, you're gonna adapt to who you're with at the time, and as your leaders change, how you do that changes as well. But that preparation, time management, like you said, is very important. The meeting that we had this past week just on setting some enrollment targets, and it was with our president, our CFO, chief of staff. The meeting was on Tuesday, and that's what I spent my Sunday doing, because I didn't have time Monday and I knew I had a prep meeting with the CFO before the meeting with the president on Tuesday. And I knew I needed to have that together. So I spent time pulling the data, looking at it. And then I think depending on the meeting you're going into, whether a VP can go to their director or like a peer like your CFO that needs a second look at it. I needed someone to take a second set of eyes, make sure this all matched up with what I was doing. I think that's important as well. If it's something you can share out as not confidential, always maybe getting someone to kind of look behind you, and then often they think of something that you didn't. And I think that's important as well.
how would you recommend somebody get past, I'll say, a negative interaction or a negative experience with their president or the board? Meaning, went in, felt like they were prepared, and for whatever reason, just the meeting did not go as they wanted, and now they're walking away, beating themselves up, and having a whole myriad of emotions. I mean, thoughts on handling a situation like that?
We all have bad days. And I think to be an enrollment leader, you have to have thick skin. And that's hard. That's a hard lesson to learn because a lot of what we do can be fun and energizing, and we feed off the interaction with the people and who we're with. And when you get in there, and whether you presented it didn't go well, you stumbled over your words, you didn't articulate what you thought, or you were just getting hammered with what was happening with the answers. You've got to get past it. You got to shake it off. Sometimes you just have to vent. Maybe you need to take an hour-long lunch and leave campus and decompress, and then come back and pull yourself together and make sure you go into the next meeting, whether it was you didn't have the right data prepared, you didn't have the answers to the questions. How do you prep and prepare yourself moving forward to get past it?
What other advice, if you were talking to, a director and AVP who wants to be obviously somebody having the level of dialogue you're now having at the VP level, Amanda? We've talked about the importance of knowing your data, right, and being comfortable with it. We've talked about, and you brought it up a couple of times, and I love this. You've had clearly people there who have, I'll say, mentored you in your journey that I think probably, and you tell me if you think I'm wrong, have probably better prepared you when you've actually been in the seat or at the table having that level of dialogue. And time management absolutely is important. What else, if anything, do you feel like, hey, like this is something to be mindful of if you're a director or AVP, if you're going to be, I'll say, having successful dialogue when you become a VP with your board or your president? Anything else?
I think the value of mentorship, I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but this can be a pretty isolating role in some ways. And I have found that oftentimes within the admission space, specifically enrollment to a larger point, we don't share our secrets with others. So, reaching out to peers and colleagues, sometimes they're hesitant to share, but I think you need to find a strong, solid mentor that's been in the role or can work with you. And I have been lucky and blessed early on in my career to have great mentors. I think the networking and professional development, going to conferences, talking to different people, and then one other thing I've recently done is there's we off of Ted Lasso. I have my Diamond Dogs group, and there's a group of four of us that are different spaces within higher ed, from the vendor side to this chief enrollment officer, director of admissions sort of level, and we get together once a month on Zoom, and it's a chance personally to connect, but also sometimes you just have to vent our frustrations, and they can understand what I'm going through. So you've got to find your people, and you've got to be able to, because you can't vent, decompress a lot and to your team. You just can't do that. So if you don't have peers on campus and colleagues, you've got to find them somewhere else, because you have to take care of that mental health piece, take care of your sanity sometimes. So I have found that has been very helpful as well.
The last thing I do, Amanda, on every episode is something I call fun rapid fire. So I'm just going to give you a handful of things, and I want to get some quick feedback from you on each, okay?
Okay.
Coffee, tea, or what else do we do in the morning? What's our go-to?
Coffee.
Okay, what
With
kind of coffee?
coffee with lots of cream. I like a flavored creamer.
Okay.
Yep.
Best restaurant there in Myrtle Beach that like out-of-towners don't know about if they happen to be in the area?
There is a great place called Sea Captain's House right on the ocean. It's lovely.
Instagram or TikTok, where do we spend more time?
Instagram. I don't even have a TikTok account.
You and me both.
Yeah.
Song that you've been listening to a lot lately. What is it?
This is almost embarrassing.
If you're willing to
I
admit
will
it.
share it. I will share it. It is from K-pop Demon Hunters, and it is golden. It's very catchy. It was on during our open house the other day in the gym, and someone said, "Have you seen the movie?" I'm like, "No, but I love this song." So that's my latest tune.
And how would your parents, Amanda, describe what you do?
They still say I'm a director of admissions, so it's all about just how many applications you getting, how many students are coming in. So I think they just relate that with just the application process.
I really appreciate you being on today. I know that, again, talking about having dialogue as a senior leader with your president and your board is definitely something that for a lot of people can be uncomfortable, but those of you listening today, I just encourage you to take some of the stuff that Amanda has shared and just figure out, okay, where do you need to, I'll say, hone your skill set, or, add another tool to the toolbox, or, find another mentor, whatever it might be, who's going to help prepare you. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, I'll go back to something, Amanda, you said early on, which I am wholeheartedly in agreement with. Recruitment and retention are everyone's job, just like you said, your new president says now. And it's really hard for you to get the support as a senior enrollment leader if other people on campus don't truly know what you do and why you do it. Because, of course, we all think we know what each other does. And I would argue most of us don't, right?
Absolutely. No, it is everybody's job on campus.
Amanda, thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to the next time we catch up. Thanks for listening to Mission Admissions. This show is a proud member of the Enrollify Network, home to Higher Ed's the largest collection of podcasts. Enrollify is where higher ed goes to grow, so be sure to check out our other podcasts, webinars, video clips, blogs, and more. Visit enrollify.org and subscribe for all the latest details and content drops directly to your inbox. Enrollify is brought to you by Element 451, the digital workforce platform for higher ed. Learn more at element451.com.